All right, Seattle Sucks here. We're in our war room here for our emergency podcast. We just got the numbers in for the state of Washington. I got Greg, our emergency correspondent here. Greg, how those numbers looking?
Hey, Brian, all joking aside, and, this is something I didn't see coming. Blowing out records numbers, just the numbers I'm seeing break all previous records. Right now, Washington State has 1,469 active current coronavirus cases, blowing away all previous coronavirus numbers. This is the biggest peak we've seen yet.
You've heard it here first, guys. November 3rd, we're blowing out all records.
Welcome back to Seattle Sucks, a podcast about hating the city we love.
Welcome, everybody. This is a city that I do love right now, and I love it because I don't know where I was going with that whole thing.
Because you just love voting so much.
Because you're so
voting.
proud to see it turn blue on the big war room board.
I was so scared that we were going to go for Trump, and just very excited that instead of Donald Trump, we have a hardcore socialist like Joe Biden, who definitely has very different policy ideas than the Republican Party, and very excited about that. But yeah, good times. So if you guys haven't picked it up yet, we are doing an election special episode.
Yeah, and it is now November 4th, evening of November 4th. We're watching results come in, and you have a limited number of days left to vote.
Yeah.
So
try and get your vote in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I know you have more time than that, but it's one of those things. Don't put it off. All right.
Yeah.
Try and get it done early. So in the next 2 weeks before Turkey Day, try and get your vote in.
Cool. Well, Brian, you and I were on Dave's stream last night watching the results. Not really coming. They kind of stopped coming in by that time, and we were all just like, "Is this it?" And
the results went to bed.
And we were, we were not trying to bring the vibe down, but we were definitely the two of us shooting glances at each other on that couch, looking down at our phones, like kind of shitting bricks, like, holy shit, this looks like trash. But
yeah, we're like, holy shit, Lauren Culp is going to win, which was good for us because we both voted for him.
Yeah. Okay, should we start locally here?
Yeah. Let's talk local news.
I think the governor's race is as good as a place to start as any. I didn't look at the latest numbers today, but I mean, last night with quite a bit reporting, Lauren Culp had an entire 40%, which is, in American electoral terms, that's a landslide for Jay Inslee. I mean, almost no other race will finish that far ahead in the entire country, at any level, right? But how fucking embarrassing. And that's really the theme, I think, of this whole thing, is just embarrassment for no matter what your perspective, just for America. Certainly the Democratic Party, which is incapable of embarrassment, should feel embarrassed, but Jay Inslee, who will tout this as a great landslide victory, 40% to Lauren Culp, who I saw his big pitch is basically anti-mask, conspiracy theory, whatever, cause du jour of the online MAGA right is, that's Lauren Culp. So there's a billboard in Inner Bay that says, under Governor Inslee, with Culp's face huge on it, just says, under Governor Inslee, masks will be forever. And it's like, what does that actually even mean? How is this possibly the sort of through line of an entire political valence?
Yeah, it's
And that got 40% of the vote in Washington State. Here on the left coast.
yeah, I mean, when you're running against such a ridiculous figure, you'd hope for better. Now, I will say the one funny thing that did happen to Lauren Culp was that as he was running, right, and essentially had relinquished his sheriff's position in Republic to run, the town of Republic decided, hey, who needs a sheriff? Defunded the police department and killed his position.
That is amazing.
And that
Where
is
the fuck is Republic?
That is extremely funny. I believe it's in Eastern Washington.
Yeah, but like, I don't
All
know.
right.
Colin, where's Republic? You know the
I don't-
other side.
I honestly, I don't know, and I haven't looked, but I do know that it is the east side of the mountains. What was funnier is he posted a sad boy video this morning about it in his car with his like earpods in.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to become one of those crying cops on TikTok that plays, the sad version of Radiohead's Creep while he, cries that nobody loves him.
Whoa, holy shit, guys. Breaking news.
Well, he's-
Holy fuck. Republic is at the intersection of the 20 and the 21 in north fucking Washington, like way north of the
It's by
Grand
the-
Coulee Dam.
Yeah,
like
by the Canadian border.
yeah, like up near the fucking border. Fucking nothing. No one is alive up there. That's like an undeveloped wasteland.
Well,
Cool. 40%. 40% for the cop whose department was defunded.
Was it defunded because he refused to prosecute a rapist? Who knows? But we'll see. I refused to arrest a rapist.
So they had one cop, right, for like the town of 1,000 people, and now I'm guessing that just means they decided it would be cheaper to contract services to whatever like shit county that is. Yeah, so now whatever county sheriff will be rolling through their town instead. That's just a guess. I'm obviously not going to look into that. I don't care what happens in Republic or to Lauren Culp. And I don't think anyone's ever going to care again. He is the kind of figure in a lot of ways who could like use this grift to catapult himself to a cush gig. You could see him, but he's just like so many other figures we've seen. He doesn't have half the charisma. I mean, this is a guy who's markedly less charismatic and intelligent than, say, Ari Hoffman, who we've already seen totally fail to parlay his worthless, pointless candidacy for like right-wing revanchism into any kind of media career. So I don't think we'll ever hear from Lauren Culp again. I mean, we may, since he's been canned from his job and is now just like probably terminally aggrieved and sees himself as sort of a wounded hero or something. I would bet the next time we hear from him is in the form of a mugshot.
Well, breaking news out of Republic. Somebody has heard Lauren Culp's pleas and has put forward this offer that he can mow my lawn. So future work for Lauren Culp ahead.
Hell
so
yeah.
Just glad to hear, the thing about elections that I hate, Greg, is that with an election, you necessarily have a winner and a loser. And I don't like to see
This
people.
is a big problem with the Constitution. Yeah,
It
I
is.
agree.
It is. I don't like to see people brought down like that. So I'm just glad to see Lauren Culp can be landing on his feet, doing well out there. So good for him. Well, why don't we keep it on cops, right? Let's go. Let's get to the beef here. Let's talk King County amendments. In the case of King County amendments, guess what's happening with the sheriff's office in King County?
Fill me in, Brian.
Well, first off, it's going to be appointed, and its duties are now going to be determined by the King County Council. Overwhelming results in both cases. The King County Sheriff being an appointed position won by 12 points, and the duties being appointed by the King County Council, that won by, oh my God, I got to do math, 25 points.
Wow. That is unalloyed good news. It is not great news because it's really a kind of a small gesture and a step. We talked about, was it just last week? We talked all about this. But that is good news. I mean, especially that it so easily like blew past the numbers. Like, that's great. I mean, Good.
Yeah, it absolutely crushed. Also, the OLEO, or Office of Law Enforcement Oversight, the subpoena authority, passed 82% for, um, as well as the inquest process passed 80% for. Now, the thing I think to say about this is, we mentioned this on the stream last night, but I think this is a cart and the horse scenario where people need to keep focused on what actually put these things on the ballot and got them passed, which
Yeah.
is people in the streets protesting police violence, protesting, the police existence, right? Demanding things to be defunded, all this kind of stuff. That's what got these things on the ballot. And that's ultimately what, had people thinking, fuck, we should pass this.
Yeah.
And so this is the cart. The people in the street were the horse. But very good. Very good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. It is good. And yeah, I mean, when we get through all this wonkery, we should really talk about how do we drive the horse forward,
Other things that passed, the Harbor Review Medical Center bond, that passed, which is good because we're all about to die of COVID. So guess what, guys? You might be able to get intubated in a newly renovated unit. So very exciting.
In other Washington news, looks like Danny Heck is going to be the lieutenant governor. Obviously, Bob Ferguson was reelected. Once again, looks like we will just terminally have a Republican Secretary of State in this fucking state. I guess it's like...
Do you think that electing another Republican Secretary of State means that we're going to be on a permanent war footing with China from the state of Washington?
I hope so. Kim Wyman's the incumbent as well. I mean, I guess it's a fucking miracle that we don't have a Republican fucking attorney general. Yeah, that sucks, but it doesn't... I mean, who cares, right? But it is just funny. It's just like the way people split votes in this state is very strange. But I mean, that's America. It's everywhere. People split their fucking... We're seeing that hugely in the presidential race in the Senate and the House. So more local, Seattle. Some good news. Kristen Harris Talley was elected pretty handily, looks like, down in the South End. The candidate we were sort of most closely following, Sheree Lascelles, has not been elected to represent their district in Olympia. That will go to 55-year incumbent Frank Chop, who has based on his statements over the last week leading up to election, it's clear he has, because of this challenge, been pushed almost as far left as when he himself was when he first entered the legislature in the mid 90s. So congratulations. Democracy works, everybody. That's a bummer. That race, that's something we were invested in. I was out knocking a lot of doors for Sheree. A lot of really good people were really excited, and they're a really good candidate with, a lot of really brave and bold things to say about how they would seek to govern in Olympia. And it's a bummer that is just totally... that the just Democratic incumbency and the power that represents is just something you can't go up against, even though everyone seems to know Frank Chop is going to retire midterm so that the Democratic Party organization can essentially appoint a successor who doesn't have to go through a primary and a general election before filling the seat, to prevent the possibility of electing a candidate like Sheree Lascelles.
Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of interesting. Last time the stream, we had Cassidy on, who's been on the show before, and she was saying, like, that's actually extremely common.
Yeah,
Democrat Party will run an incumbent who plans to retire so that they can replace them sort of, midway through the term, and then that
with a back room, smoke filled room kind of deal.
And that person then becomes the incumbent for the next election, which is obviously a huge step up for them or like a huge boost for them. And I just gotta say, democracy works.
Yeah, which dimension of chess is that? So like the
That's
seventh
the
dimension,
thing
or
is that's just chess. I think. I think that's just the rest of us are playing checkers.
Yeah, it was I mean, what are you gonna do, right? The system works.
Yeah,
Clear
look,
proof.
that's it's just one minor sort of funny thing that's emblematic of everything we call liberal democracy in America. Like, it's a fucking joke. It doesn't amount to shit, which I think is the other theme of this cycle.
We've teased it long enough, Craig. Can we talk about the big one?
Well, like we said, we were sort of shitting bricks last night. Colin, how are you feeling watching this stuff come in? Did you lose faith your hero Joe Biden would he would make it?
yeah, I just kept saying ain't so, Joe.
Well, you were
I wondered who would fondle those gilded leg hairs.
well, right when your Country Joe character was about to take off, and it looked like it might be strangled in the crib.
I was trying not to pay too much attention because, frankly, it just was too much kind of cognitively to take on yesterday. But I did check before I went to sleep, and I was basically where you two were at. And I assumed I was going to be waking up today to a Trump reelection.
Yeah, I mean, as we closed out the night, it really was a complete toss-up. Everything was shaded Trump, right? Now they're still waiting for a ton of votes to come in, and we're still waiting for a ton of votes to come at this point. Nothing's announced at this point. But yeah, it was looking like Trump was definitely going to win. And I got to say, I think about 9:30 last night, it kind of was clear that this was not going to be a big win for old Joe, for old crazy Joe. And I started laughing maniacally. And it actually brought me right back to 2016 when I watched Trump win in 2016. And I remember almost falling off of the platform of my machine because I was laughing so hard at how much the Democrats have fucked it. And honestly, look, I mean, the big takeaway for certainly libs on social media or whatever, so let's be clear at this moment, it does look like Joe Biden's going to win. Like something extraordinary is going to have to happen at this point.
Yeah.
He's going to scrape by.
It's pretty much sewn up. They're waiting to call, Nevada at least looks almost certain when they get those last few votes in to go for him. And that sews it up right there. That's 270.
Yeah.
So, and then some, I mean, at this point, because at this point they're calling, AP is calling Wisconsin and Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious. Like, we'll get into all the machinations, but like, earlier today, the Trump campaign was suing the state of Michigan to stop the count.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you still want to stop it now? Now that Biden's up a few points. Man. Yeah, look, it is fucking hilarious. It's hilarious that we're just reliving the same thing that but ultimately this just clarifies everything we already knew. The Republicans haven't, I mean, the Democrats haven't lost, they've won. This is their biggest possible win. They have done what they always set out to do, and in sort of the most spectacular fashion. They are gaining the presidency, but barely, which is the Democratic strategy every time. It's let's win by as little as possible, to keep the stakes high, to keep the promises low, right? And they're getting it all in this. They managed to run way to the right, beat it, flogging the socialists left in America, preventing Bernie, nominating the most racist old shithead they had, and they're going to pull it out. They're going to hit their numbers exactly, which is to barely cross that line, to just barely win so they can now staff up the entire federal government, be in there. And meanwhile, it's better than they were probably even could have hoped, because they clearly didn't want to fucking win the Senate, or they wouldn't have put all that fucking money into some a Trumpist piece of shit like Amy McGrath in Kentucky, right? They clearly don't give a shit about. They clearly don't. We know they don't want to actually be able to govern. So this is a big win for Joe Biden, for Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, who is probably going to have a slimmer majority in a House that she will somehow still be the Speaker of than in 2020, and a Senate which they will not take control of by the looks of it. So this is a big win. This is a vindication. And what's great about for them, they'll be saying that to themselves in their hearts, and they'll at the same time be able to go on TV, and in the New York Times and the Atlantic and whatever, and go like, Joe Biden won, blah blah blah. This was a historically high turnout, blah blah blah. Which it was. I mean, that is what we're seeing. I mean, I'd be really interested to really in the next weeks read stuff about how these numbers all break down. But even last night I was saying I'm skeptical about high turnout, but it seems like, as I have been all year, I mean, since the primaries are over, it seems like this was a massive turnout election. I've heard people say biggest in 100 years.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing. And then the Democrats will say, look, we turned out all these people and we won. Don't look into it any farther than that. Because the truth is, not very flattering for them at all. It seems pretty clear if turnout is up, it's because because of COVID, so many barriers to voting were removed that a bunch of people who just never had the time or bothered or didn't regularly were able to vote, because there was so much more early voting, so much more mail-in voting available to people, that a whole bunch of people who, would vote if it was easy did. So it was nothing Joe Biden did to turn them out. Clearly, I mean, he barely campaigned. And more damning, they'll just say, "Look, we won. Don't look any further into it." But more damning is that as turnout went up, Republican turnout went up, and this is something that the Democrats have said for years is not how it would work. This is something I actually believed, that historically, Republicans have the same basic turnout they're ever going to have, this rump minority. I was saying this last night on the stream, and that has been true. And under normal circumstances, again, I think that that would be true. But what Democrats have said for all time is as we turn out more people, Democrats will do better, because basically, and look, they'll still be able to say it because he did win. More of the increased turnout went for Joe Biden than did for Trump. But it's Jesus, this should have been a fucking blowout, right?
Well, yeah, we should talk about that a little bit, right? And then we'll get to the other points that you brought up. But yeah, I mean, the idea that higher turnout favors Democrats, that was considered in political science like an iron law of the modern sort of American electorate. Right?
Yeah.
I remember 20 years ago taking political science classes in college, where they would say, we'd talk about this very thing. We'd be like, look, if you can depress voter turnout enough, the Republicans will win, because they will always turn out the exact same number of people. The only group that's variable is the Democrats, right? And what we saw here was that law that held true. I mean, the reason why it was considered like an iron law is at that point it had been true for decades.
Yeah.
So we're here on probably year 40 of that. And what we're seeing is it's actually breaking down, right? And it is that, even in the conditions that we're currently in, right? A pandemic that's killed 250,000 people, a climate crisis that brought us 5 of the worst wildfires in California's history this summer, right? Introduced us to the concept of fire tornadoes and inland hurricanes this summer, right? And an economic crisis that is going to have the largest eviction. We're facing the largest eviction crisis this country's ever seen. Completely unprecedented. and the incumbent Republican Party grew their base for the first time in 50 years, grew their base.
Any one
And
of these crises
would have tanked any
should have,
president.
any incumbent in American history
Mhm.
should have been the end of any incumbent. If we were operating on
Yeah.
any of the rules that have existed before, any party, any incumbent, their fault or not,
Well,
over.
When the economy collapsed,
And of course, he is going to lose. It looks like he's going to lose. But the thing is, his fucking numbers went up. More people fucking voted for Donald Trump, it seems, now than they did in 2016.
Mm-hmm. When the economy collapsed in the Great Depression, and Roosevelt won 42 of 48 states against the incumbent because everybody said, "Holy shit, this is a fucking disaster," and voted the incumbent out. Now, in 1980, when Carter ran against Reagan in the Volcker recession, fucking collapsed the economy, fucking Reagan trounced Carter. In 92, when there was a minor recession, it ended George H.W. Bush's thing. In 2008, even though Obama wasn't running against the incumbent, he was running against the incumbent party. The 2008 crash swung that election so fucking hard towards Obama that he won in a landslide. And what we see now is a complete reversal of that universal trend, in the sense that the incumbent, with a running in a scenario or an environment where just unprecedented disaster under their watch, right? A combination of unprecedented disasters. And they not only almost won, but they grew their base in the process. And other things that we have to factor into this, I think the other, boring lib taking a lot of is like, wow, what a racist country. Donald Trump, it looks like, is going to have grown the black vote for the second time now in the presidential election. Will have grown the black vote for the Republican Party.
And even more
will have grown the Latinx vote for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And the thing is like, I think there's a thing here that, like, one, Dems, everybody, all your, lib faves on Twitter are going to completely ignore, but something is happening right here that should be deeply troubling.
Deeply frightening and troubling, yeah.
They're all going to claim victory, and they're going to insist that there are zero lessons to learn from this. But think about this. If COVID, so one of the three fucking disasters we talk about, if COVID didn't fucking happen, right? How many states would Trump have won? 50?
Seriously.
49, 48? It certainly is 40 plus. Like, I mean,
that's the thing. That's the thing you have to reckon with, is the turnout, the boost in turnout. You probably did, because it was easier to vote, probably did help Joe Biden much more than it helped Trump. But even Trump's numbers grew there. But without that, and that the double effect, right? The boost in turnout plus on some level with some people, it's that this whole fucking disaster has to have been bad for the incumbent. Again, not with everybody, but it has to have had an effect on some people. So without that, yeah, he easily wins 40 plus states.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we're looking at right here is for Democrats to win as currently constituted, right? To run the candidates they want to run, which are hard right candidates, to run the campaigns they want to run, which are campaigns where you just stand up there and promise that nothing's ever going to change and that people are doomed forever. Basically, in order for them to win these races, what we're learning, they are going to require a once-in-a-century pandemic to have killed at least 250,000 people in the months prior to the election, right? Because we have to assume that this happened at the beginning of the Trump administration. Probably has no impact. Trump wins again, right? So, I mean, it has to happen in perfect timing with the fucking election itself. They have to have, I mean, luckily the climate crisis thing is only going to get worse, but they need, a work, like, the Democrats need an apocalypse to happen under a Republican presidency in order to barely scrape a victory out.
But it's not anything you can bank on. And that part, for whatever reason, is not a surprise to me. The turnout part, I've been saying all year since the primary, this will probably be a low turnout election, because I was just thinking in terms of normal elections, not like actual ability to vote. Like in the aggregate, if you think about it this way, in the aggregate, voter suppression was actually way down in America this year. In
Sure.
some ways, certain types of voter suppression, especially more targeted, seriously nefarious types, were probably up. Where you have, you have cops like macing lines of black voters like heading to the polls. Okay, you have targeted neighborhoods at certain demographics. You have them trying to throw out all kinds of shit. But overall, our whole system suppresses the vote. The way from start to finish, we make it such a pain in the ass to vote in this country the way a lot of other places don't, is a suppression of the vote. Overall, it looks like voter suppression was way down because like just the availability of voting was way up.
Well, and the main thing is that voter suppression mainly happens at the polling place. So just the introduction of early voting essentially short circuited a lot of the voter suppression that normally happens.
Yeah, the normal techniques. Yeah. Now, the thing that is less surprising to me is that COVID didn't really have an effect. I mean, this is another thing I've been saying all year until, I mean, that debate kind of swung me, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are getting it. Maybe like as the new fall spike starts, like it'll have its effect. But no, my initial instinct was more correct that there has not been enough time for this to be processed, for all these deaths, the level of death we have. And maybe it's not even a time thing. That's what I've been saying all year. Maybe it'll never happen. Maybe there's no amount of time that will ever make this like a politically salient thing for people, because people just don't believe that it can be any different. And fuck, they're right.
Yeah, I mean, the COVID thing, the reason why it has no impact is because Biden specifically ran on doing nothing different. Right?
Yeah.
Like his whole thing was like, what are you going to do different? Well, I'm going to believe science. It's like, okay, so what are you going to do different? And it's like, nothing. I mean, there was never a plan.
No. Not everybody gets medical care.
Yeah,
fuck you. I never said that, and I don't believe it.
He was the anti-healthcare candidate in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, basically, what normally happens in a scenario like this, where the incumbent's totally eating shit on 10 different fronts, is the other candidate runs against him on those fronts.
Yeah.
Whereas Biden agreed with Trump on every single one of those fronts. It's like, no, I agree with Trump. I'm going to do all the same things he did.
Like literally in the last debate, they just for an hour just stood there and we like, yes, no, actually, I agree with you. No, I agree with you, sir.
Yeah, and
so, they were really just accusing each other of lying about agreeing with each other.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
incredible.
And so he wasn't able to turn any of that stuff. And so because if you're Joe Schmo who's going to go vote or whatever, you look at that and you're like, well, COVID's not an issue because they both agree with each other. Like so many things are not an issue because they clearly don't agree with each other. So you're just voting essentially on, college football affiliations, probably. Yeah. Urban, rural. That's always the popular one. That kind of shit, like the usual shit, like, so yeah, I mean,
and especially for all those new people, all these people who voted never or once or twice in their adult life, who suddenly like the ballot just showed up at their house and they're like, oh, okay, I have to get this in by December, right? And they just happen to get it right. They just happen to have like a free Sunday afternoon and filled out their ballot. And we're just like, well, whatever, sure. No, this guy seems all right. He's kind of tough.
Well, I think the issue too is that, to get back to the point you were saying earlier, was whether the Democrats are actually even attempting to win at this point, anything. And I think we had said earlier, and nothing proves this more true than this result, as far as I'm concerned. We had said earlier the Democrats won the election they wanted, which was they beat Bernie. Past that, they didn't care, and they didn't bother to campaign. They put up Joe Biden, and they just said, if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. And it looks like they'll accidentally win, but they don't give a shit.
This is the 17th dimensional chess they're always going on about, Brian. Mm-hmm. This is the real skill. This is like the culmination of the consultant classes, like dark magic.
Yeah.
like the spells they've been casting for 4 years. They're doing it. They're coming in and they're taking the risk because it's a big it's one thing to pull out all the stops and try with all your might to win and, you know, let it fall where it may, but to hold back, to risk losing because the thing you want most of all is to barely win. That takes balls and skill. You got to give them props.
Well, and I think, and I want to sort of draw our attention to two races that I think kind of summarize like the actual intent of the Democratic Party, which was the race against Lindsey Graham, right, in South Carolina in the Senate, and the race against Mitch McConnell, right, also in the Senate, right. The Democratic Party set records in both races for amount of money spent on a single non-presidential race, spending over $100 million against Lindsey Graham and spending, I believe, $90 million against Mitch McConnell. They lost to Mitch McConnell by more than 20%. They lost to Lindsey Graham by more than 10%, right? By more than 10 points, right? Huge fucking losses. And what was going on? And the entire time they were spending that money, everybody pointed out, where's the money going? Why are you doing this? These are obviously, you know, lost causes and all this kind of stuff. And I think it is showing what a lot of people who were following the Clinton campaign in 2016 said, which is that to a large part, the Democratic Party is just a money funnel at this point. It's just money laundering. It's a way to take money from, you know, professional class dupes in major urban areas and transfer it to, you know, friends in the, you know, campaigns and things like that, right?
The consultants, the pollsters, the media buyers. Yeah.
And it's just this huge drop of money. I mean, the funniest thing about the McGrath campaign, which was going against Mitch McConnell in Kentucky, was a lot of that money that people, particularly after Ruth Bader, you know, Ginsburg decided to die to make sure that Trump could appoint another Supreme Court justice. You know, a lot of that money they were giving to McGrath in response to RBG dying and, you know, Ruth Conda forever and all that shit, literally went to Trump ads in Ohio. So
that's amazing. The fact that that's not like that's like a thing that gets talked about on like left Twitter and not like in any kind of mainstream Democratic media discourse, like that Amy McGrath was literally a pro-Trump Democrat. But the ones who know, the nerds, the Democratic nerds will go like, well, I'm holding my nose because this is the smart thing to do, you know? But they were literally running Amy McGrath pro-Trump ads in fucking the Cincinnati media market, which Trump is going to win Ohio.
Yeah.
They were putting that money went to Trump in Ohio.
Well, Ohio used to be a swing state that Democrats would win on occasion.
Oh, I remember those old days.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, more so than you know, why people might have voted for McGrath or whatever, I want to make a comment just on the Democratic Party itself. So, you know, however many thousands or tens of thousands of dupes who were convinced to give money to this campaign, again, because of a whole made up cultural bullshit thing with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? And the disgusting fucking notorious RBG shit. None of those people know, and probably still to this day don't know, and probably never will know, that they literally funded Trump ads in a supposed swing state. And the Democratic Party
the losers.
The Democratic Party did that to those people. It made them into fools, right? It made them into morons, right?
Well, but that comes naturally to the Democratic Party. It's what they do every time they accept the vote of anyone.
They are snake oil salesmen. And the thing that people should take away from this, and I say this every election, so, you know, we'll see if anybody listens this time. Give up on the fucking Democrats already. Stop fucking supporting this awful fucking party, all right? Like, they are trash. Give up on them. Like, they literally took your money and ran fucking Trump ads with it. I don't know what to tell you other than that. Like, they literally, for all that shit they tell you about Trump being Mango Mussolini and the new coming of Hitler and all this shit, They literally, because nobody knew when they fixed the primary for Bernie, nobody knew that COVID was going to go this long or be this bad, especially nobody in the Democratic Party. They literally were like, we'll throw the presidential election in order to keep Bernie from fucking winning and to keep healthcare off the fucking table.
Yeah.
They were,
because
there's no
way, there's no fucking way Trump loses without COVID.
Yeah. And the Democratic Party was openly and very wide-eyed, eyes wide open, willing to throw this election to Trump. So if you're one of those people who thinks Trump is the worst thing that's ever happened, he's this, insane existential threat, the Democratic Party was perfectly happy to give you 4 more fucking years of them. Give up on this fucking party. All right. Like, you need to stop fucking, don't give him any fucking money. Don't give him anything. Give up on this fucking party. Nothing is going to happen in this country until the Democratic Party fucking dies. Like, it is an absolute cancer on this fucking, on society. How do you feel about it, Colin?
Well, I think this particular race kind of highlights a trend that I've been noticing more frequently, which is that for liberals, especially like yuppies, professionals, PMC people, is that the only way that you can articulate anything political is by consuming or giving money. And so this whole thing it's like everything's mediated by commerce, essentially. Like, we have to have shirts, right? Notorious RBG, like you said. We have to donate. Like, I was getting texts from Biden and Harris routinely for more money. Just give these people more money, right?
So they could dump it in these black holes in Kentucky and fucking South Carolina, right? Nobody knows where it went.
And that's the weird irony too, that they're taking all this money, and then you get this weird warm feeling that you're participating in politics in some way by giving somebody who's running against Mitch McConnell and has no chance, never had a chance, no matter pretty much how much money you threw at her, that you're some informed, super liberal, like awesome rock star. And that's the end of your engagement in any political capacity.
Well, and I think the thing is, and this is the bigger issue that we sort of, kind of have to talk about, which is the question of where political power actually comes from, where to go in the future. But the one thing is, Americans, for the most part, have completely accepted that their sort of political identity and all that, their sort of essence is as consumers, right? That's why they see their political voice and their political input as only being consumption, giving money to a campaign, buying a t-shirt, whatever. And that is, we've dropped the label, we've dropped the class war, and now we're all just consumers in the marketplace, a very neoliberal fucking spot to be in. And we're seeing the results of that, which is the Democratic Party can do whatever the fuck it wants, because once you give them your money, you have no ability to ask anything of them or right to ask anything of them. Well, and so they tell you to fuck you, and they tell you fuck you, and they spend it on Trump ads in Ohio. Again, a real thing that fucking happened that nobody's going to talk about after this.
Look, it's also part of why, the left has a hard time selling an electoral message, is that nobody really believes anything better is possible. And it may be partially because we're so convinced that everything is, like you were saying, Colin, as well, on the level of commerce, that is the only sort of sphere that any choices can be made in. That when you say, what about Medicare for all, get on board with that, and people instinctively somehow think, listen, if that was realistic, I'd be able to buy it right now. It would be on the market.
Yep. And
you're talking about some extra market process to introduce a new product that doesn't make sense. The market, it all comes to me. I have the options. It's all there. I can make the choices if I can afford them. Outside of that, it just must ring hollow to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just prior to us going on the stream last night, without going into too many details, but my insurance, which I was very excited. First time I've had insurance ever in my adult life this year. Very exciting.
Wow.
Yep. My insurance, which I was very excited to have, finally denied my wife an important, medication that she needs because I guess it's too expensive or something. Just fucking denied it. What can you do, right?
What the
But
fuck?
this fucking happens to people all the fucking time. And I think Greg is right in the sense of like, this is devastating, right? This is like devastating shit that happens to people all the time. And everybody has stories. That was just a very brief one that just happened. I could tell a million more. And the thing is, why do people not like, people should be going into fucking insurance companies and doing mass shootings, right? Why don't they?
Because they should be a video game about that. Yes.
Yeah, they literally don't believe anything is possible, right? Because I think you're right, Greg. I think we've so internalized the neoliberal ideal of the market is the ultimate arbiter, in our lives,
and the ultimate provider.
Yeah, is that if it was good, if having public insurance was good,
or even possible,
the market would have done it already, right? And the fact that it's not there must mean that it's not possible and not good, right? And it's this insane spell that people are under. But I really do think that part of the reason people are under it is they really do, in a lot of ways, see their primary identity, whether they admit to it or not, through their actions, see their primary identity as consumers.
Yeah.
Which is why whenever something bad happens, the first response is always, I'm going to stop buying beans from those, from that company, right? As opposed to like, why don't you organize the workers at the shop there, right? Like, do something that actually matters, right? But that never comes up because we're consumers first.
Americans love voting with their dollar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's their favorite
thing.
It
reflects how atomized everyone is as well, and that we have also all internalized this concept of more or less being individual rational actors in some supercomputer in Wenatchee, and none of us can coordinate or work together or make any decision apart from participating, like you said, in some market. And like, to the broader context of this conversation, I don't know if either one of you saw the graph that was going around, but it's estimated $14 billion went into this election cycle.
Criminal.
Last one in 2016 looks like it was maybe around 7. So it's doubled.
Well, listen.
And for what?
And honestly, the 2016 one probably doubled over 2012. I mean, what we're seeing is, because we're all consumers, right? We're seeing this just enormous tornado funneling money upwards, right? And it's funneling it upwards in every capacity, whether it's through your school forcing you to buy or lease computer equipment that some tech company force them to force onto your children, right? In every way, or even just the in the campaign, the campaign system itself, where various consultancy firms has just become welfare for like consultants, right? It's just funneling all the fucking money upwards, right? In every interaction, it funnels it upwards. And I think the consumer mindset that we're all just individual sort of like monads in the computer or whatever, all that shit, it's what we're seeing is the end result of decades and decades of neoliberalism having dissolved like fucking acid all the social bonds that exist between people. And as it dissolved all the social bonds, it literally left everybody helpless. It's the economic version of counterinsurgency, right? It goes through, it kills any ability for people to resist by destroying their ability to get together, and then just leaves them starving in the dirt behind. And I mean, I don't know how you can look at this election and not think, I mean, as it was going, it's like, yeah, this is just a confirmation of that. Like, there's no level. I guess if this is the space we're in and it's this close or whatever with the incumbent, apparently the incumbent, there's no level of misery they can inflict that won't that will impact them, right, negatively. It's astonishing. I mean, this is a real testament to what neoliberalism has done to the American psyche up to this point, I think.
So then, the question becomes like what to ultimately take away with this and how to like move forward. I mean, it's been, already broadly laughed at the idea that, a Biden administration could be pushed left or something. That was absurd even in a scenario where they took back the fucking Senate. But at this rate, that's not even going to happen, and it'll be the easiest thing in the world for them to just say, well, what do you want us to do?
Yeah.
They've already set the stage for this, though. Also, you have Delaney coming out saying, "Oh, we've just reset the clock more than 4 years. We're going back like almost, I don't know, a decade, and we're gonna have this fun bipartisanship conversation.
Bipartisanship is back, baby.
Yeah, we're bringing the beer summits back.
What he means is we set the population clock back a decade because that's how many people are going to die of COVID.
So, yeah, like to that point, Greg, I think that it's just going to be this fun, cool, holding your hands up and going, well, there's nothing I can do. I'm trying to work with them. I'm trying so hard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, what I think that has to show us is that it's okay. Like whatever the insufferable libs and the Dems say about how, oh, this is a big win. We did good. We're not stupid. And also, no, you can't criticize the Biden administration or you can't try to push us left because blah blah blah. Republican. Just the time now. I mean, it was already. I mean, the time to completely check out of this was March, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Bernie dropped out. But once and for all, like this ratifies every bad feeling you've ever had about the possibility for change in America through the, path of electoral politics. It's not happening.
Yeah, I mean,
don't bother.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't worked for 200 years. It's a little foolish to feel.
Now on the local level, sure, do it. Keep work at whatever. But on the national level, there are other. This is basically a con job. It's something that's dangled in front of our eyes as a distraction. I mean, this has all been said, but the question of what to do now, the answers have nothing to do with how do we push Biden left. Just don't. Biden administration is the enemy. It is the executive committee of the capitalist class and nothing more. And it's not going to be anything else. Just because they just defeated the big bad orange monster doesn't put them on the side of any working people or human beings in general. They're not going to do fuck all about climate change. And frankly, that probably means it's too late. And probably like, by the end of our lifetimes, like the planet will just be a wasteland. Like,
well, I mean, we should talk a little bit about that. I mean, when we talk about, the Biden versus Trump dynamic, whether you can push Biden left, I mean, one of the things you have to consider is that Biden's not making any of these decisions in some sort of vacuum, right? He's going to make these decisions in a world of crisis, right? And so we know climate's going to get worse. One of the things that's driving, migrant movement is fucking climate change. We know that there is a combination of drought and things like that in Central America, as well as a combination of radical like mudslides, like increasing mudslides and things like that, because when the rains come, they come late, and when they do come, there's too much and all this kind of stuff. But that's what's happening in Central America. That is combined with the American coups in places like Honduras that have made those places incredibly violent, as well as the weapons that the U.S. flooded into that area in the 1980s, right, is pushing a migrant surge, right, that as climate gets worse, as American counterinsurgency in Latin America and Central America gets worse, is going to further escalate the migrant crisis. And we don't actually have to ask the question of how would Biden respond to that, because we know how the Obama administration responded to it, which was to militarize the border and put all those children in fucking
why, Brian,
cages.
They're gonna need a wall.
Yeah, exactly, right?
In 2016, why the wall was racist, but that was a different world. Now we're facing an impending crisis. And that's going to be the entire fucking next 4 years is them either responding to or causing a crisis. So if you're trying to push that administration left, it's just going to be to like make their authoritarian right-wing crisis response slightly less miserable and horrible, right? Like, because that's what's coming. Okay, if maybe a group of people got into power in this country that had some overarching progressive socialist program that they were operating from, something that was looking ahead to try and actually cut off some of our worst sort of problems of the coming collapse, that might have, and that had developed a base of power with which to confront those problems and actually like also respond in a reasonable way to these crises, then we'd be talking about something. But that's not what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I mean, capital will not allow the migrant crisis that climate change is already creating. Capital will not allow it to destabilize the sort of imperial core, right? The United States, Europe, right? That's why the Europeans are like letting 1,000 people a year die in fucking boats trying to cross the Mediterranean right now. And that's why the United States, by the way, allows 500 people a year to die on the fucking US-Mexico border. Now, under Biden, as that crisis gets worse, capital's not going to allow a more compassionate response. The response is going to be to militarize the border. At the same time, as we slip into this economic depression, and next thing you know, we have 40 million people nationwide about to get evicted, right? When we have unemployment like nobody's seen, right? When we, as this crisis just grinds people down and down, if people go into the streets angry about that, again, what do you think Biden's response is? What do you think his donors are going to allow him to do? And again, we don't have to ask because we already know. We already saw.
He's already said it as well.
Yeah. He's already said that he wants all the Black Lives Matter protesters arrested. Every time he's been
shot
asked
in the leg.
Every time he's been asked the question about Black Lives Matter protests, I mean, he mentioned the police should shoot people in the leg. Fucking insane. But when he's been asked about the Black Lives Matter protests, he has always responded, no matter what the question was, has always responded that I think they should be arrested, right? He says, I think that the rioters should be arrested. Now, we know that Black Lives Matter protesters are de facto or, are declared rioters from the beginning at any of these events, right? But if the question is, hey, they're having an uprising in St. Louis, what do you think you should do? Oh, I think they should be arrested. Oh, hey, the cop shot another black person. What do you think we should do about that? And Biden will say, I think the rioters should be arrested. So he's already said it. We also know what the Obama administration did, which was when they wanted to get rid of Occupy, the Obama administration used the Department of Homeland Security to coordinate a national police strike against the Occupy encampments. When Obama wanted to get rid of Black Lives Matter because he thought it was embarrassing, he used the Department of Homeland Security to infiltrate people into the Black Lives Matter movement, to arrest people. And wouldn't you know it, a bunch of people in Ferguson who were leading the uprising in Ferguson miraculously were found dead in like cars that had been lit on fire, and nobody knows how they died. Whoops. I guess just a coincidence. Don't need to look into it in any way, right? What did he do in Standing Rock? He fucking coordinated with Tiger Swan, a goddamn mercenary firm who he put in charge of the fucking FBI and the local police to go and crack down on water protesters in Standing Rock. And we also know what Biden will do because we know what every Democrat fucking mayor did in this country when Black Lives Matter rose up under Trump, which is brutalize them, arrest them, squash it at any fucking cost. So again, when you look at all the crises that are on the horizon for the Biden administration, that are just baked in, that are not going to, whether you elected Biden or Trump, is going to have no impact on these crises whatsoever. They're all going to happen no matter what. And you think about how is Biden going to react to it? And the answer is exactly the fucking same as Trump, because capital doesn't give any fucking leeway on these questions, right? He has no option. He's going to react that way. Not just because he wants to, which he deeply does, but because that is the only option that's going to be on the table. And when it comes to COVID too, that's the exact problem with COVID. What does he need to do to stem COVID? He needs to shut down the fucking economy and pay people to stay home. What is Biden said he's not going to do explicitly? Shut down the economy and tell people to stay home. So guess what also is not going to get better? Fucking COVID. So it doesn't fucking matter is the point. Do whatever you want when you vote for president. Who fucking cares? Vote for, Hunter Biden's cock, for fucking president. It doesn't fucking matter. And that's the thing that people need to get through their heads. It doesn't fucking matter who's in office, all right? The thing is, the crises are there. The individual in office can't control when those crises come or don't come. And the thing is, their options, their ability to respond to those crises are severely limited by the fact that they are owned. They're owned by the capitalist class, and they can't do anything else.
And because no one is seriously challenging
Yes.
the power of that capitalist class. And that is not something that a presidential administration in the United States has an independent power to do, is the point of this. That's not something on the menu. There is only one force that can challenge the power of capital, and that is the people who fucking work for them.
Yeah.
And so can be the only thing. That's really the only thing we can take away from this. This country may be hopeless. The best we can hope for might be that we lose the Third World War, are destroyed, and that whatever the New World Order to come manages to mitigate climate disaster. After, penning the mutated refugees of America into our continent so that we can't pollute the rest of the world. The survivors of the American nuclear holocaust. That might be the best we can hope for. If we want to try for but we have no agency in that. When the time comes, you can fight for the resistance against the American regime. But before the Third World War breaks out, the only option for power, this is all about power. This is about who has power. And in American federal politics are not a question of who has power. It's just a question of filling functionary roles and sort of a cultural pageant. Yeah. We have, if we want to actually make change in this country, we have to force it by taking control of key parts of the economy. And you don't do that by electing people. You don't do it with ballot measures. You don't do it, frankly, by marching in the streets. No shade to marching in the streets for Black Lives Matter or to defund the police. We've done that ourselves and have been in great support of it. But it's something much better and more effective than electoral politics. We've seen that. Things have started to move in this town and a few other places in unimaginable ways because people were just shutting down traffic. But ultimately, for all the effort that has been expended in the streets, I think it's a great thing. It has, begun to move things, move policies in small ways. It has also radicalized a lot of people and sort of painted a clearer picture of what our politics are in this city and in this country. And it's, brought it's an opportunity for solidarity against white supremacy for all people to come together. But ultimately, it's not going to end white supremacy. Marching in the streets, even torching police stations, looting Walmarts, it's not going to do that. Because as much as everyone, Democrat, Republican, and your grandma, freak the fuck out at the idea of blocking traffic, forget breaking a fucking window. It's not really what gets the goods. Ultimately, you have to shut down the economy, for real. You have to control key places in the economy, key logistical chokeholds, and use those for demands. And of course, what I'm talking about is a labor movement. Maybe that looks like something different. Now, you have to separate that idea from what the demands are. The demands of a movement have to be the same, have to be the end of white supremacy, along with the end of capital. It can be the defunding of the police as a start. Mm-hmm. But the question is the strategy for taking that power, because just advocating for those things is not it. Demonstrating for those things is not going to do those things. So if those are the demands, you're going to have to take power in this economy because that's what actually matters to capital, and you have to challenge their power there. So,
I think, this is kind of a moment to take serious assessment, right? And for all the good things that certainly we've pushed for on Seattle Sucks, and we certainly see happen in the area, right? Including these sheriff's amendments and things like that. What does that compare to what was done against, greater obstacles in Bolivia,
Yeah.
right? What does that compare to Bolivian socialism? What does that compare to what was done against, again, even greater obstacles in Cuba, right? And things like that. And the issue is that we have to take seriously, look at the past and be like, what has succeeded and why has it succeeded? And, capital has a great ability to ignore people just marching in the street. I mean, I remember when millions went out against the war in 2003 being one, I was one of those people, right? And I also remember George W. Bush going on TV and literally just telling reporters, yeah, I don't listen to focus groups and doing the war anyways, right? And so the thing is capital has a great ability to just ignore that shit, to send the police out to attack it, all that kind of stuff. The one thing it can't ignore is when you shut down its supply chain, when you shut down its ability, its sort of networks, its ability to move goods and to move capital around. And, that's why the labor movement has gotten the goods in the past, right? And I think we have to be serious about that. The worst thing that happened to the American left was, after, and for reasons that aren't 100% its fault, there was COINTELPRO, there was, lots of state repression of the American left. But the worst thing the American left did was it ran away from the labor movement and ran into the colleges. And quite frankly, it needs to get the fuck out of the colleges and back into the labor movement.
Not because of cultural signifiers, not because the working class is some naturally, historically heroic sort of formation. It's just where the power is.
Yeah.
In capitalism, the capital has the power, but there is naturally, inevitably a latent power sitting on the table to be grabbed. If look, Amazon takes millions of people in this country alone to run it, and the whole rest of the fucking economy runs on it.
Yeah,
that's power. So that's when we talk about, the importance of, when the left talks about the importance of labor organizing and a labor movement as foundational to socialism and whatever, it's not because of anything but that's the money on the fucking table.
Yeah.
There is no avenue to power anywhere else. I'm not even saying totally give up on electoral organizing it in parts, especially again on the local level. I think it's very important, but it is ultimately going to be meaningless to change any of the big issues, like how we confront climate change, how we end white supremacy.
Well, how you confront the police, right? The way you confront the police is through the labor movement. You force the police to shut down, right, and things like that, right? You by wielding power. And yeah, I mean, you're right. If you're in the desert, you don't go to the oasis because it's the moral thing to do. You go to the fucking oasis because it's where the motherfucking water is.
Yep.
Right.
Yes,
and
exactly.
It's like at some point you got to see where the power is. And one thing that is definitely going to happen. We've been in a period now of 4 to 5 decades of pretty serious monopolization in capital, right? We saw dozens of media firms turn into one media firm with mouse ears, right? We see monopolization all across the board. And what we're going to see as we go into this depression is that shit is going to go into fucking overdrive. Like Amazon is going to be half the fucking economy 10 years from now, which honestly for the labor movement, fucking good. That means that's one logistics network that's easy to fuck up, right?
Exactly.
There are a lot of warehouse workers at Amazon. We can go talk to them. We can go organize them. Better yet, go become one of them. Go work in these places, right?
Listen, fuck whatever you thought your dream career was. You're not going to live out your 85-year life expectancy.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Your life is like a video game entrepreneur is going to be cut horribly short by the continued occurrence of fire fucking tornadoes. All right. This is a thing that happens now. All right. So fuck it. Go to an Amazon warehouse. All right. By the way, this is, when the labor movement was, having success in the United States, this is how it functioned, is that people, even if they weren't headed towards industry anyways, were told, hey, fuck what you're doing and go into industry. Um, you know, I had a friend in Washington, D.C., who his father was part of this like Maoist group in the late 60s, who graduated from fucking MIT and became a bus driver in Washington, D.C. All right. I guarantee you from MIT, his path wasn't bus driver. But in his mind, he was like, I need to go find a way to actually organize the working class. What's a way to do that? I'm going to join the bus drivers union and start driving a metro bus in DC. All right. And that's the kind of decisions that people have to make. All right.
And what's great about our moment right now is you don't have to make the same kind of gamble that guy did, because honestly, he never did organize the working class, and there never was a revolution. And he probably should have gone and got a job at Con Ed or something.
He hilariously became president of that union.
Oh, well, okay, all right.
A great organizer, actually.
Great.
Unfortunately,
didn't matter.
We needed 10,000 more of him.
Exactly. So that's the problem, right? Like, how do you, when you don't know, you have the solidarity of labor movement behind you that's really going to do something. You have to be an extra brave and noble man like that guy to do that. Well, you know what? You don't have to, because again, you're not going to live.
Yeah. The world is ending. I don't know how to stress that enough.
You can just, this is just, you have nothing to lose. We have nothing to lose.
Yeah. It's extremely bleak, people. I don't know how to express that enough.
We are maybe getting to that point where people will have nothing to lose but their chains, right? Like, as they take away the last shreds of dignity and stability, it's not going to be this thing where everybody rises up to overthrow capital or even the government, but it might make a few more people willing to take that risk and become serious organizers, and more people will be willing to listen to them, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, in June, fires crossed into the Arctic Circle for the first time in human history that we know of. All right. Climate change, it's actually already happening. I mean, the Syrian civil war, climate change played a part in that, right? The disaster in Darfur, climate change played a part in that, right? Climate change is going to lead to increasing issues of crop failure and famine, right? Drought, urban areas are going to flood, is going to create a level of chaos that capitalism will only be able to respond to with violence. And, we actually know that's the American response, because we've been militarizing our border in response to this. And the Defense Department actually has been making up plans for rapid deployment forces and stuff to respond to climate change disasters, which means to shoot everybody from the third world coming to the imperial core to try and escape the disaster the imperial core caused, right? And this isn't doom saying, hey, 1,000 years from now, this is going to happen. For most of our listeners who we know from our statistics are an average age of 12, this is definitely happening in your lifetime. Now, granted, your lifetime is also going to be cut incredibly short by the rapid spread of disease from climate change. So you're probably only going to live to like 36. But is definitely, you're going to see this impact. It's already happening. The time to act is now. The time to care about the Democratic Party or its failures or whatever was long ago. All right. Fuck these elections. We got to do something else. This hasn't worked for 200 fucking years. You got to do something else. When I would like to just make one last comment about Prop 22 passing California, which basically allows, the gig industry, Uber, Lyft, etc., to not have to call their employees or give them the legal protections thereof, essentially making them independent contractors. And I will point out that was the normal state of affairs in the United States, which was as a worker, you were just an independent contractor and your employer bore no responsibility for you or anything like that.
Which itself as a concept is just a way that was invented to get around America's meager labor laws.
Yeah. And it's basically a way to return. Look, we're building that bridge to the 19th century. And it's important to realize that what meager labor laws this country's had, what meager social safety nets had, that was all an accidental blip of history that happened to coincide with the creation of the Soviet Union and the Cold War. And the second the Soviet Union vanished, that shit got erased real fucking quick. So, I mean, Prop 22 is a little thing, but it was probably the actual biggest election as far as a bellwether for this country, that happened last night. And it basically, I think the clear thing is, look, we're building that bridge to the 19th century. So get used to it. I don't know what to say beyond that other than I blame Colin for having proposed it.
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
The road to hell, paved with good intentions.
Well, that brings up something that I think I was left pondering after you both were talking about how we take power or how we exercise real power is how do we get over the increasing obsession from both parties with personal responsibility and the increasing atomization and alienation of workers. Like, probably hard to imagine a more drastic example of that than gig workers, where, like you said, you are a company of one, essentially, with no benefits and a pretty hefty tax obligation, honestly. How, and again, you're probably living on the margins, so you have all of these things stacked up against you. How do we surmount that? I mean, how do we galvanize labor movements when the trend is to increasingly disperse the workers from having much solidarity or even having awareness of belonging to a true class?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why Uber and Lyft like these kind of arrangements is that it does make it more difficult for their, workers to organize, right, and to work together. I think just right at the top of my head, I mean, the first thing we need to do is we need to convince people to stop caring what the Republican or Democratic Party does. Right? I mean, that's step one. We have to convince people their savior isn't coming, right? Like, there is no salvation. There is no pie in the sky when you die, right? I mean, that's the old labor movement joke, right? It's never going to be there, all right? And that's the thing that has to be done first, is convince people to stop paying attention to that shit, all right? And start paying attention to, what's actually happening on their jobs and their coworkers and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it seems incredibly difficult. The only thing I can say is, most work in America was contract work until the labor movement forced it to be, the current arrangement, right? To be full-time, year-round, and to have, the current sort of employment protections and stuff like that. So it can be done because it has been done. How do we do it, though? That was 100 years ago that, people were able to organize on that side. I have no fucking idea. It's truly, it's going to be incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it's going to start on each individual job site in each industry. I mean, I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, it's gonna be really tough. I mean, but the first thing, which was true in the 19th century too, the very first thing that has to be done is illusions have to be broken, right? We have to put on our big boy pants. And that first illusion is that there is a Democratic or Republican choose your poison savior out there for you. And that's the first illusion that has to go. Basically, the only people that are going to save us are ourselves. And we're going to have to figure that out, man. I mean, and it's, how do you get that message across? I don't know. I've been pushing it for a while, and I don't think I've ever had any strong success. So, I was working in machine shops handing out communist papers and stuff. I don't know that I ever converted anybody. So fuck if I know how you do any of that shit.
Yeah, but I think, well, maybe we talked about this last time we recorded. I think that you're right, Brian, and that ultimately we all need to be focusing more on what we can do with in our own lives and realize and recognize that a lot of what's happening on the national stage is mostly a weird entertainment for a certain class of person that doesn't really have much real skin in a political game beyond the perpetuation of a status quo that is destroying and literally killing people every day. And like I said, I mean, I don't know how we proceed. And like you said, I don't know how we change people's mind. But despite it being difficult to have those conversations, I think some part of those people have to hear you and recognize those things because they're very obvious if you're paying attention.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, as somebody who was not born a red diaper baby, who grew up the parents of boring Democrats in South Texas, right, in a city that no political organization ever cared about. So it wasn't like Seattle where there's 782 Trotskyist organizations and one of every other normal political group. We didn't have any of that shit, man. It was just literally Democrats and Republicans. The first people who brought radical ideas to me or whatever, I rejected them. Right? I was like, that shit's stupid, dude. That'll never fucking work. Or, whatever things that everybody always says. But the thing is, for me, that shit, it crawled into some dark part of my brain and it sat there. And it continued to eat away and eat away. And as I saw things get worse, as I saw things, not go the way the fairy tale tells you it's supposed to go, but go the way it actually does in America, which is just a never-ending shit sandwich. Those ideas became clearer and clearer. And it is true when you talk about political development that it's not linear, and nobody can probably point to the person, like, realistically who, like, won them to anything. I guess it's a cumulative effect. It's a quantity into quality, right? If we were to go with the fun dialectical terms, right? A quantitative, sort of input that turns into a qualitative shift in your sort of understanding of the world. And my only reason for kind of going into this is to say, have conversations with people. You need to go talk to people, all right? Like, leave the fucking city, for Christ's sakes, people in Seattle. Leave the fucking city for fucking once in your life. Leave the fucking city and go talk to people. And have
Seattleites are famous for hiking.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Leave the city to talk to a human. And then, actually have conversations with them where you treat them with respect and don't act like a fucking asshole know-it-all, but actually treat them with respect and have a normal fucking conversation with them as if you were a human who's actually engaged in human contact with another human before, which I know will probably take practice for most of the people in this city. But do those things, and even if you don't change that person...
The revolution's not going to start here.
Yeah,
tell you that,
no shit.
Right?
But, go do those things, and I guarantee you, it has an impact, right? Trust me, as a reformed asshole, as a reformed, shithead, it has an impact, all right? You need to go do that. And you know what? Don't be so possessive. Don't demand to take credit for change that you see in other people, all right? So have the conversations with people and don't worry about if they become, Maoist third worlders in the next week or not, right? But you need to start talking to people, and you need to talk to them not about, dumb pie in the sky shit. You need to talk to them about the conditions that they're experiencing right now, right? And you need to talk about and try and draw connections between the experiences and the struggle they are having and the larger system that is creating that struggle for them, right?
Yeah.
Having that conversation of, it would be great if we had, better services like Medicare for All or whatever, but we can't have that if the American empire exists as well, because we're going to constantly be paying for war too, right? You need to have these kinds of conversations where you try and, connect the local issues they have to larger issues within capitalism itself and back again. All right. And you need to have those conversations with respect and not talk to people like a goddamn know-it-all, which I know is fucking funny coming from this podcast where all we do is talk to people like know-it-alls. But, you know, that's the prerogative of podcasters, and that's why it's not political organizing. So, but, you know, that's our prerogative, so we're taking it. But
hey, I have for the last decade ranted to anyone standing around about my complaints about the business we work in, the current work situation, and how that relates to capital exploitation. Have I gotten through to anyone? I don't know. Has it hurt my career? Probably.
Absolutely. By the way, it will hurt your career. Look, you're not going to get rich doing this. You're actually going to get poorer because you did this. All right. It's going to hurt your job chances. It's going to hurt a lot of things. But at some point, you know, what are you going to do?
On the other hand, I have also spent 20 years off and on, slowly, proddingly, a little bit, more serious campaigns from time to time, and retreats, strategic retreats. At other times, I have slowly always held out hope, ever ready to give an encouragement to one day see the day come when Colin would start watching Star Trek: The Next Generation
and become a Wesley Crusher head like Greg.
Yeah, and listen, that day came. And for all our thoughts for all of Colin's thoughts on season 1 of Star Trek: The Next Generation, you'll have to tune into our Patreon episode this week.
Yeah,
thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Leave the city, go talk to people, be normal. Yeah, I mean, that's all we got. Sorry that this was light on jokes. You know, look, we were up all night watching the elections, very excited. And then, you know, I don't know. I don't know how you look to the future and have positive things to say. But
half of the people listening just thought to themselves, do these guys think they're funny?
Yeah. Wait, was
this supposed to be a comedy podcast?
Was this podcast supposed to be normally funny? Was this an aberration? Because it all is at this level. They probably thought this was the funniest episode is the problem. But yeah, so you know, we'll catch everybody next time. I don't think we had any new patrons, or at least we didn't check.
Like I said, I was just putting in a fuel tank today. I didn't really prep for this.
Yeah, so I don't say.
Didn't even finish.
If
I
you're
still don't have a fuel tank.
Yeah, if you're a new patron, we'll catch you in the future. Stick with it. We will say your name eventually. Greg will mispronounce your name eventually.
Wow, sold out.
Yeah. All right. Well,
good night.
Yeah, hang in there, everybody, and good night.
Una mañana desorienté, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Una mañana desorienté, salí a buscar al opresor. Es mi deseo, seguir luchando, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Es mi deseo, seguir luchando con el fusil para la libertad. Y si yo muero en el combate, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Y si yo muero en el combate, tome en tus manos mi fusil. Soy comunista, toda la vida, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Soy comunista toda la vida y comunista he de morir. Soy comunista toda la vida y comunista he de morir. Y si yo muero en el combate, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Y si yo muero en el combate,